Hey guys, TJ just jumping in at the beginning here. Just two very quick things. Please don't skip this. I will get you straight to the action. First and foremost, this is the 11th chapter in my ongoing series. Do not start here. You will be very, very, very confused. I have linked the full playlist in the description below, as well as the supercut of the first 10 chapters. Check that out, then come over here. I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much to Dark Somnium for collabing with us here and being a part of this. It's been so much fun. The other thing is the Dusklight intros and outros are now at the end of the video to ensure we get better retention. So if you are on the Patreon or if you just enjoy Everett's stuff, that's now at the end. I hope you like that. This is the end of 1330 round 2. Me and Vidith are so grateful to all of you who have joined us. Please come and find us tomorrow. We're going to be streaming around 6 p.m. EST. We'll be going through our next set of plans. We've got a compilation during our 1 week break off. Then we come back for season 6 with some fresh ideas. Thank you so much. I really hope you enjoy this, and we'll see you for the stream tomorrow. Take care. And so, we're back to the present. All the documents, transcripts, pieces of information you've been hearing and reading were gathered by me. It's important you understand how we got here. To the precipice of madness and only a single night to remedy it. To step back from the edge after glancing at the sheer drop into the abyss. For posterity, my name is O.F. Province. I am an investigative journalist with the Sturgeon Nexus. I began looking into the disappearances of Dondella's queer community after multiple reports began circulating around the town and found their way to our local branch before being passed to me here in Central Sturgeon. The fact it took 6 months and over half a dozen bodies is beyond depressing. No, not bodies. I shouldn't say that. People. Half a dozen missing people. Their remains wouldn't even begin showing up until the following month. People go missing every day. Most turn up fine. But there are categories for these kinds of disappearances. The first is, of course, the most common. Those who return. Across the world, people forget their phone, lose their signal, go on a prolonged trip away, have a minor or major mental break and go AWOL, or have a medical episode. Within 24 hours, they're usually reconnected with their loved ones. Any potential police intervention is receded and their lives continue on. Nothing more than a blip on a radar. Conversely, there are those who disappear for prolonged periods of time, only to turn up much later in a different part of their city, country, or even the world. Differently dressed, well-nourished, unaware of the time they've had spent away from their life. As if stepping out of one timeline and into another. Sometimes it's head trauma on a trip away. Others, it's a psychotic break. Most who return know nothing or say little of their sojourn away. So the mystery remains. Then, of course, there's the most unsavory category. Those who are lost and never come home. They go out of the door with a smile on their face, a promise to see you soon, and the next time you see their face, it's on a missing poster, a television appeal, or, God forbid, in a morgue. You never want the last one when it comes to our current missing persons case. Believe me. I was in the room for a family identification of the Antlion's 5th victim. I'd been there when the body was found and was involved in the search, for reasons I'll get into later. And I will never forget the howl that left the victim's mother as they revealed the body. As if purpose and form had been ripped away from her in that moment. Her soul being forcibly torn from its physical counterpart. Once the howling stopped, she simply dropped to her knees and fell silent. I don't blame her. The body was recognizable only by one thing. The birthmark they shared with the mother. The bite marks and experimentation made everything else almost unrecognizable. Such was the modus operandi of the Antlion. By this point, you will have heard the testimonies of victims, co-conspirators, and family. A window into the man behind the monster. But I aim to give you more than that. No more subterfuge, riddles, or deadly games. Just him, me, and a recording kit. I have everything in place. The higher-ups don't want to hear it, and the authorities governing this land are complicit. The allies and activists do nothing but talk big while proverbially eat each other alive, while the Antlion literally eats them alive. The real change does not come from uncontrollable emotional outbursts, online clout and engagement, or from bull rushing. It comes from one powerful moment where nobody looks away and is inspired to make change. Because someone has to understand the Antlion beyond his insidious rhetoric. It is not enough to simply fear him without reason or love him without prejudice. Evil must be understood. Evil must be codified. And it must be caught. It took months of research to get this meeting. From the earliest days of the Antlion's activities, I began scouring the internet for anything to connect the motives to a person of interest. I asked around fringe groups, places where the mainstream is shunned, those who would support the Antlion may congregate. Maybe he had a penchant for attention, as most serial killers do. No such luck. All the while, more and more people went missing, seemingly too many for one man to enact on his own. But the longer I looked, the more the realization dawned on me. Others were helping him, doing their own dirty work, knowing full well they could get away with it. That hastened my desire to search. I eventually managed to convince my colleague to brainstorm with me one night. After a few too many drinks to wash down Mr. Moloch's delivery, we stumbled into a bar called The Spaces in Between, a humble establishment in the entertainment district. Nestled between two disused buildings thanks to the recent financial cuts from our esteemed governor, The Spaces in Between never seemed to struggle for clientele, supplies, or keeping its prices cheap. Most folks will tell you that the bar simply appears whenever you need it, but I imagine that's more creative marketing than anything else, or a cry for help with alcohol. The interior is cozy, well lit, and furnished like a tavern out of time. Oaken wood floors, marble tables and countertops, a roaring fire in the far left near a karaoke bar, missing persons reports on a large gated-off corkboard alongside photos and trinkets of past patrons, and a slew of cocktails, beer, cider, and spirits lining the walls of the main bar. It felt like home as I felt the warmth and hobbled in. We put our coats on the rack and ordered some off-menu drinks my friend swears up and down had mystical properties. Whatever. I'm content with the resident dog, a big Bernese mountain dog called Cheddar who boofs and slobbers all over me as I make my entrance. I grew up with Goldens, so I felt right at home as I sit at the bar with his big head in my lap, demanding scratches. Bartender's a nice enough fella, blonde undercut and circular glasses and a three-piece suit called Sully. He listens as we ruminate over what to do before pushing two small, bubbling shots in front of us.
It's on the house. These are a special blend. The milk concoction. Should help the creative juices. Sometimes you just gotta look inwards and find your mind palace. Your inner sanctum, if you will. Good hunting to you.
He winks and smiles as he saunters over to his wife, and she smiles back. We nod and neck back the shot as the sensation of licking a battery courses through my throat, shivering my whole body and his words hanging in the air. Inner sanctum. Hey, could we look for former patients or employees of the sanctum? Maybe we can cross-reference it, I quipped, still feeling the shivering die down.
Sure, makes sense to me. I'll wrap this up and get to filing. You coming with?
Nah, I think I'll swing by the Sturgeon archives on my way home. Try to get some supplementary material. I'll catch you at the office later? Their reply is fuzzed over in my mind, hazy, like I'm caught between sleep and wake. That would be the last time I saw them. The research continued, this time with a solid thread. Now, it's compiled for all of you. But we have one more thread to pull on before it can be tied together. The following is the surviving records of Patient 27 from the Inner Sanctum. I will supplant these between my interview with the Antlion.
Monday. I was not allowed to document my first month, but had I done so, it would have been filled with the usual you'd expect of someone forcibly taken and thrown into a prison by those they loved the most. Why am I here? What did I do wrong? Why do they hate me? Will I die here? I want to die here. I want to kill everyone. I want it all to stop. In the intervening 6 weeks, I've learned such questions will not get me my freedom, nor will they get me better treatment. I've been angry, apoplectic even. I've been maudlin, shy, secretive, manipulative, and accepting, all to get what I want most. Freedom. But freedom does not come so easily in a place such as this. To the outside, it is a facility for the mentally unwell, the discarded, the unwanted. You could affix whatever targeted groups you like to that if it makes you feel superior. I don't care. It is where the unwanted go to be reformed or die. With that, we begin with my average day in hell. I woke up in a sea of white. The buzzing of the lights overhead was at first piercing to my ears, but now I find it comforting. The background hum of my entire universe in these padded walls. The lights themselves are manually turned off at 11:35 p.m. at night and brought back on at dawn's first light. But the orderlies are not above keeping them on for days at a time as a form of punishment. I spent 5 days in constant brightness. No way to block it out, as even my blankets are thin and unable to fully shut out the white light. I learned quickly not to let that happen again. Today, they formally inducted me from egg to larva. I was forced to stand up until my legs gave out and stay perfectly still. Any movement or reaction was met with punishment in the form of a small shock. Bruises are not permitted during the induction phase, so I was told. I've been permitted to document my thoughts. These go into what they call a void basket, which will mean they're not read or sent anywhere, but will be returned to me on my release as a memento that I can look back on with renewed and reformed eyes to see how foolish and pathetic I was. So confident are they in their approach to fixing me that they will let me detail the horrors within. Fine, I'll play along. This is a battle of endurance, after all. My spirit versus their rhetoric. I won't crumble so easily, for I come from a line of fighters. They shaved my head at the end of the day. I loved my hair. It was something I felt defined me and made me feel unique, but they said it was a distraction, that it wouldn't help my renewal process. My clothes were taken, as was my piercings and jewelry, but it let me keep the pendant my grandfather gave me. A small carving of a giant from an old land. He said it brought good luck. I kept him by my bedside. He helps me relax. The facility has, as far as I can tell, a prison-style approach to housing its patients. I don't know how this was ever possible or permitted, but that hardly matters now I'm here. Protesting my way out isn't going to work. I've observed that I'm on what looks to be the 3rd floor of a medium-sized hexagonal building with 28 rooms spread out across the floor. Guardrails and plexiglass line each walkway, and every room has a window that can be peered into by both the orderlies on rotation and the central tower with its large searchlight. If that light falls on you, you have to respond to its commands. To ignore it means punishment, and you don't want that. Every morning starts with mandatory medication and a search of the room, including your person. It stops feeling like violation after the first week, and you dissociate and focus on other things. For me, I looked towards the farthest room from my own, imagined a portal in the window, and imagined going through it. Only when they stopped, and I was restrained before moving, did I come back to myself, trying to ignore the bruises and the pain. Whatever they gave me stops me from utilizing any of the abilities I've come into possession of. It keeps my mind sharp enough to document, to notice, to experience the gamut of emotions. But when I try to manifest, nothing occurs. They walk me to my first session, always on an empty stomach. They say it keeps me ready and willing in order to get my reward, a meal. The therapist is fine, a milquetoast, by-the-numbers guy named Rawlings. He prattles on about the state of things in the world and how I need to not look onwards but inwards. Some of the things he says helps, but mostly he refutes anything I say about how I feel, says it's wrong or delusions, and ups my meds. I learned to be more mindful with my answers after that first month. Not met anyone else yet. The punishments are beginning to become easier to deal with, though that's not making them any more fun to go through. I will keep resisting where I can, however, until they realize I'm not changing. I have my first visit with my family tomorrow. They'll see the state I'm in, and that'll be that. I'll ride this wave out as long as I have to.
After leaving the spaces in between and tipping Sully a little extra for the inspiration, the research came together at a remarkable pace. I went through the Inner Sanctum's records and found only 2 families that had multiple members of its household admitted to the sanctum within the past decade of its operation. One was quickly ruled out after a few short emails, that of the Blackwell estate. So that left the other, the Gahart family. Ironically, the oldest family within Dondella, alongside the oldest aristocracy within Sturgeon. When I say the Gahart family is old money, I am using that term liberally. Old doesn't begin to cover the span of time this family has been within Dondella, either exerting influence, producing artists, or skilled visionaries. Since census records began, there has always been the Gaharts. Some say they may have migrated from elsewhere, but their blood is Dondellan, and has been for at least 6 generations. From there, I was able to track down the first case of admittance and work my way forward through the other patients. I even made a corkboard for each member of the family to tie them together and the various information that I'd compiled. If you've gone this far, I'm sure you won't mind a brief recap of the events leading up to this moment. After all, it's important you remember everything that happened here. The earliest point in the 1970s gives us Patriarch Oliver Gahart, Rodney Saunders, the household butler, and associate Archibald Downey. We start with that strange website, though that wasn't my first bit of information on the old man. Oliver had made a name for himself as a noted historian, archaeologist, and scholar within Dondella. Proud of his roots and patronage to the arts, he loved uncovering the truth within Sturgeon and its surrounding towns, which not only spurned on his expedition to find Octan, which was originally reported as a fool's errand turned misadventure in the papers due to his injury, though he was praised for locating unique artifacts along the way that will delight the patrons of the Sturgeon National Museum, though these were ultimately never platformed as far as I can tell. Though some of this is largely sparse knowledge among the public, his latter work adapting the famous folklore of Angleron was most certainly not. Most kids in Sturgeon with even a passing interest in our local folklore know of the play, in no small part thanks to Oliver's translations. The Bard of Dondella was our best playwright, and as a theater kid myself, it was a delight to perform. I always ended up as Vedanta, not that I minded. From him, this familial issue seems to spread, through his son Magnus and wife Desiree, to their children. The paintings of La Serva have always been well known and respected in our art community. Tracing it back to eldest Bennett was no difficult feat, nor was locating his admittance to the Inner Sanctum. But all information on him stops after his release in late 2022. The last reports of his whereabouts coming from some scraps of what I can only infer are internal dialogues on his own work at a staged showing of his art, though this was not marketed and seemed to have been to a select group. By the time I tracked the event, the scraps were all that was left. The building had been gutted and the art moved on, maybe to private collectors. 9 months would pass before the next thread was generated, that of Lou Gahart, the second youngest. One of twins, she was admitted to the family countryside estate in September and reported missing by the end of that month. I was able to gain access under the Freedom for Information Act and a little bit of journalistic sorcery. I spun a lie about being a concerned family member. I have to say, their transcripts were both jarring to read and unsettling in the phrasing Lou used, inferring something celestial was tracking them. The ending left me unsettled and wholeheartedly confused, but it got me thinking about the connective tissue in this case. Lou would be found back at the familial home unpacking her things. She assured officers she was fine, and after a quick check with the discharge notice in her hands, they let her be. I found Phineas's letter among his things when a missing persons report was filed by the family butler, Mr. Saunders, after a prolonged period of no contact. The Sturgeon PD had someone internally who wanted to see progress in finding the culprit, and, fearing this was another victim, forwarded me the location and access to his journals. The corkboard grew a little more. Phineas was found stumbling around the graveyard in a malnourished and disheveled state. He collapsed upon contact and was admitted to the Buck McGraw Memorial Hospital for a week before being surrendered into Mr. Saunders' care and resuming his life at the Gahart estate. 2 missing members of the family, both found and returned home. Then came the curious case of Dr. Luann Coleman, a giant in the psychotherapist field and rapidly rising voice on social media regarding women's spaces and trans rights. She was the head of the Inner Sanctum's therapeutic services, and by all accounts was in great health and of sound mind and body when she made the trip to the Inner Sanctum for her internal review. However, she never made it there. Upon reaching an intersection within Central Sturgeon, she had a seizure, floored the accelerator, and crashed into a nearby wall, screaming bloody murder and fighting anyone who tried to help. She was later diagnosed with a hyper-aggressive brain tumor that went undetected despite clearly contradictory presenting symptoms and the obvious warning signs, as if it sprouted up overnight. Now she is halfway through her terminal diagnosis, spending every morning walking from her room to the nurse's station some 75 feet away. The remainder of her day, either crying or screaming. Only once did she ever break this routine to paint a 3-letter word on her mirror before backing away, shrieking, and pointing at it in fear. L-U-X. Lux. Hard not to feel sympathy for a person in that kind of hell, but when you read the reports of the Inner Sanctum's practices and victims, well, you find that patience rapidly runs out. I personally hope she rots. Another member of this narrative cut down. 2 wards over from Coleman, 3 floors down from where Phineas was recouping, there sits the mortuary that I reported on for Dr. Bancroft and Dr. Faust's findings when the first mass grave was unearthed. The presenter of our lead show, Trent Menlo, was adamant that for ratings to continue and our sponsor to be happy, he would break guidelines to name the 3rd victim, and in doing so, ensure everyone knew who they were and the fact that they were taken again. I don't know why he initially introduced himself as J.J. Watson, the monster of Mantis Bay who ran a rival station beneath the static until he was deposed from the job and from life for what he did. Trent has a sick sense of humor. Whatever. In any case, his gregariousness did exactly as intended. Outlets from various stations across the continent, both left and right-leaning, reacted. The engagement drove up our viewership across the board and incentivized our bosses to re-air the clip for almost a fortnight. Remember, if they keep you angry and fighting, they're winning. It's not the strange-looking person with a different skin color, accent, way of behaving, or living their lives that's your enemy. It has and always will be those who pull the strings, those with more money in their pockets than cells in their brain, and they want you mad. Division is natural and opinions are diverse, but hate is taught, manufactured, encouraged, and farmed for profit. Trent disappeared from the home of an acquaintance 2 weeks later. He was seen on Shark Tank being butchered alive after confessing his sins, many of which over the course of that game would help fill in the blanks of what has gone on both here and within our corrupt system, including our former Governor DiStefano. Out of a sea of brain-rotted comments throughout that stream from voyeurists, one sentiment that kept coming up regarding DiStefano bore fruit. Check that man's hard drives. someone did. I don't think I need to tell you what they found. By now, we're caught up. It's been almost a year since the events in the autopsy clinic. A familial issue started half a century ago has spilled out into Dondella and Sturgeon by proxy, taking with it the lives of over a dozen queer people and at least 7 bystanders or accomplices. The bodies keep piling up on all sides. And I want to understand the monster behind it all before it is too late to do so. An email popped up late one night last week, not long after Shark Tank had ended. I'd left a single comment at the very end of the stream when I noticed Jupiter get up and begin walking away from the cameras. Knowing it was my chance, I used a prepared account with the username Golgothan Scholar and left one comment I prayed would get his attention. I am on an expedition for the Myrmecolian. I think you may have the answers I seek. If you wish to see me, look for Province. Sure enough, upon opening the email from a proxy account, it simply said, "You have been seen and you are summoned. Your prize awaits you. Come prepared. Midnight." Following that was a location and some simple requirements, all of which I agreed to before getting everything ready. The Myrmecolian, for reference, is a medieval folklore beast, but one that by now, you and Gael would be intimately familiar with. It is the old name for an antlion. As instructed, it's midnight when I finally go to the meeting spot, a dilapidated building on the outskirts of Dondella, nearer to Sturgeon's entertainment district. The structure is grand, even through the years of decay. The Gothic architecture with Georgian remodeling shows a property that had long held prestige and regality before it fell into ruin. Another query to ask our guest once set up. I had been asked to come alone, bring simple lighting and only a recorder, no camera. I could write down and note anything, ask anything, and say anything as a result. I was also told not to turn around once during the interview until he had left, to never approach him or leave my seat, and to not show fear. Red flags so numerous and bright it might as well be a crimson canvas enthusiasts convention. But I agreed, because I knew some things he didn't, and I had an exit strategy. The antlion was not trapping me. I found my way to what remained of the parlor room, a threadbare and ramshackle room with some moldy wallpaper, faded portraiture, dusty books, and dustier carpets. But it was lit by a roaring fire and only one large hole in the roof, so I couldn't complain too much. I sat in the seat closest to the door, my name, Province, sprayed over the back of this ornate high chair, an ostentatious move by our former artist. I placed the dictaphone on the long coffee table in front of me, stretching off to another high back chair 15 feet away where he sat. His large body obscured by worn leather threads that covered his face. Piercing yellow eyes glinted in the dark like that of a tiger. Flies buzzed around him, and a sweet smell of rot and decay hit my nostrils as I gagged and held a sleeve to my nose.
Forgive me. Death follows me wherever I go. It is not my intent to disgust you, at least not right away. Allow me to remedy this.
His voice is deep, hoarse, as if speaking through mounds of dirt and years of incessant screaming. But it brings comfort, lulls me into relaxation for a moment before I pinch myself, a stern reminder of where I am and what I'm doing. His lips part to show perfect teeth with small stains as a rumbling echoes around the room, a smell of incense wafting in and masking the stench. Thank you for the accommodation, Gael. Do you mind if I call you by your official name? I tapped my pen against my chair handle, one of many nervous habits. He barely stirred from his position before answering.
Perhaps when we get to know one another a little better. But for now, my chosen name is sufficient. You have a purpose in being here. You have questions. Let us begin.
Very well. You don't see a request for your given name to be a little ironic? Those you primarily targeted were former patients of the Inner Sanctum, A facility that not only focused on rehabilitation for addicts and trauma survivors, but controversially those suffering from gender dysphoria. Let's call it what it was, a conversion camp. Those who went in also had preferred names that were not honored. Why should this be any different? No emotions, just facts. That's what will get me to the truth. I felt my knuckles stiffen up like they needed to be cracked. Gael smiled and put a fist up to his chin, amused.
A very fair point, Province. You may address me however you wish. The name was one I chose to distance myself from the life I'd led to that juncture. A flashpoint, if you will. That sent my soul tumbling down another path, and enraptured by the cloak of something more. Gael is Bennett with a focus. Is Lacerva with infinite inspiration. Is the best of both with drive to see change. I would call any of my apostles by whatever name they chose, for it was not their physical bodies I saw, but their souls. I do not harbor hate for them, only a desire to help.
Help is a strong word, Gael. You know why they call you the Antlion, right?
Because the world at large has long held a fascination with the macabre, the violent, and the ugly. We see a dead body in the street, and though there will be disgust and horror, it will not take long for someone to poke it with a stick, to steal it of its belongings, its dignity, and to then publicize it for profit. The mystery of who they were is not nearly as intriguing to the public as the special kind of monster that put them in that state. Names are important, you see. They are powerful. They give form to the shapeless monstrosities that lurk in the dark, that prowl the nightclubs for the most vulnerable stumbling home, that strike when nobody's around to save you. Society rarely remembers the names of those who have been slain unless it is in infamy and disrespect, but they always know the moniker of the slayer. It is its own macabre art, one Lacerva drew great inspiration from, and I funneled into my hands as I went about my work.
A very educated response, but not what I was asking. They call you the Antlion because your modus operandi has been to abduct, trap, and devour your victims, leaving the bodies either mangled and filled with bite marks or, in some cases, only leaving scraps of flesh behind, not dissimilar to that of an antlion. They call you that because, yes, they fear you, but because you're not a person to them. You're a monster. Which leads me onto my next question. Why eat them? The feeling is tense but controlled. The room is bathed in a purple hue, and Gael thinks aloud before responding. If he's rattled by my questions, he's not showing it in the slightest.
Your title was Golgothan Scholar, so you're familiar with my work and that of my beliefs, yes?
I nodded and he continued, the smell of incense burning my nose and the feeling of my body sinking into the chair as he spoke once more. Tree trunk-like legs draped over one another like a mad king on his throne.
Then you know of the biblical reference of Golgotha, the site of Jesus of Nazareth's betrayal and crucifixion. It is Aramaic, place of the skull. And though my more rambunctious followers would have you believe I am a Catholic or some other denomination, I am not. I am a follower of something more celestial, though no less real and much more involved in providing divinity to those who seek it. There is a place beyond the purview of this world that houses entities and deities you cannot possibly comprehend. Creatures with minds and machinations that are so grand in scope, they would make the meek among us prostrate in terror. The Abrahamic guard could very well be among them. I've not had the pleasure of checking, but he is not who I get instructions from in how I pass judgment to my apostles, nor how I make them.
He stands up from his chair abruptly, the force toppling over as a smile once again creeps across his still obscured face.
How badly do you wish to know me? How far will you go to learn my methods and unlock the secret of this humble pilgrim before the day of reckoning arrives? Will you transcribe every ugly detail? Think carefully now. Your interview and your soul may be at stake.
My spine seized up and I gripped my toes on instinct, not out of pleasure but out of sheer dread. What was he implying? Would he just walk away before anything was properly revealed? What would happen to me? I thought of that night, being in the identification room. The way she wailed. I'm prepared to bear witness. Yes. I said you had the answers I seek, and I won't run now. I felt my body hum and lock into the chair as I finished speaking. Gael disappearing before my very eyes for a few minutes before reappearing with a body, held up by the neck and twitching.
That was the right answer. Now, I will show you exactly what I do to pass judgment and why. Don't blink. Savor every detail of it.
Then, he opened his mouth.
Tuesday. They never came. For all the talk of being saved, being rescued, being heard, not one person close to me has reached out. I wish I could tell you I'm surprised, but I'm not. Through the years, I've watched many a person close to me talk a big game of support, camaraderie, and lifelong bonds, but as I began to understand myself and we grew apart, priorities shifted, and I became a burden, a puzzle too complex to make the effort to understand. I went from being the perennial people pleaser to putting up the smallest resistance, and that was enough to discard me. That's what they don't tell you when you change and leave behind total passivity. You lose those who only enjoy you as a soundboard, as a conduit, as a thing to be admired, not to be wrestled with. For the average person, it's perfectly fine to be ugly in moments, to be angry, mean, conceited, unkind. But not me. I'm not a human, so they say in here. Part of the lessons we've begun undertaking is to strip away everything of me, reduce me down to a construct, and rebuild me. One of those things is to remind me that my decisions led me here. My choices put me here, and if nobody reaches out, it's because they don't want me the way I am. I'm lower than a dog. I'm furniture. Most people will experience loneliness, devaluation, rejection, and feel the pain of isolation. Few will be truly dehumanized to the point that putting you down is no different to stepping on a leaf. Still, I tried to hold out hope on the next visitation date, holding some modicum of space in my heart that surely my family, my loved ones, would not betray me. Instead, dejection setting in as I scanned the room. No sight of my parents, my siblings, or anyone I knew. The world sank away, and for a moment, I felt my soul crumble, only to be greeted by, of all things, a divinator. She was older, maybe in her 60s, but walked with the air of someone much older. I barely sat down before she started laying out the cards on the table in front of me. She said her visit was not planned, nor would she leave any record. She told me she had good news and bad news. The good news was she knew what would happen to me in the long run, her slim, bejeweled fingers purposely placing the cards with an audible smack. First, the star, my past. Then, the devil, my present. Finally, the world, my future. As she concluded, she whispered something that I cannot repeat here. She asked me not to commit her words to any journals, so I'll abide by that. But while I was devastated to not see my family and hear nothing from them in the time since I was brought here, her words gave me both comfort and purpose. The bad news, she said, was that only I could see this, and to my captors, I was having a full-blown conversation with nobody, and there would be sufficient punishments meted out for this. I am destined for great things, no matter what horrors await me within here. I simply need to stay on course and weather the storm. I've accumulated 7 scars on my body so far. One across my lip from an orderly who felt I was speaking out of turn, 3 on my back from the lashes given during punishments, 1 on my palm from gripping a piece of glass too tightly for too long, and 2 on my chest. I'm prepared to gain many more if it means getting out of here. It will only make me angrier.
I watch in abject horror as Gael's mouth unhinges, his body glowing and the entirety of the room shaking, almost heating up. My hands free to write, but no other movement permitted. Still, he speaks, a formless voice echoing around the room.
My gift, as you no doubt know, allows me to manifest most of which my mind can conjure, from making memories tangible to portals between spaces and bending reality to my whim. I am near omniscient in my abilities. However, being only a servant of the divine, I have my limitations. One of which is that I am not able to see the souls of the individuals I take, nor anyone for that matter. I chose those who I know are broken and in need of repair, yes, but I cannot pass judgment on looks alone.
I stare, committing the appearance of this person to memory. That is what matters. Fear may blot out some aspects of my lateral thinking to the point that I'm not able to remember the current victim count, but I know this face. It's the bassist of a local band in Sturgeon, Lingua Franca. The bassist is 24-year-old Grey Provolo, former patient of the inner sanctum who was forcibly removed by their parents after finding out just what kind of place it was. They were last seen leaving a practice at the Dusklight Theater 4 days ago. Remember the name. Remember the face. This is what matters. Gael sees my fear and his jaw finishes extending, the aura around him churning and shifting from a purple to a deep red as it floods Grey's body, making them twitch and convulse for a few moments before their limbs fall limp. Gael holding out a hand entrenched in the sickening aura, making it look like a claw.
The flesh of a person, their blood, their essence. That is what keeps the secrets of us locked away from prying eyes and would-be judges. The only barrier between you and your soul, ripe for the taking.
He bit down, hard, a flank of their shoulder faltering under the weight of his bite. the perfect teeth stained with blood as the body reflexively twitches, but no resistance from its owner. After a moment of unbroken eye contact, he pulls his head back and rips it clean off the bone, spraying me with blood as he chews before swallowing, his aura shifting to that of an azure blue. The body, too, matched the aura as Gael's eyes filled with tears, streaming down his face before he took another bite from their neck, the aura unchanging.
This is how it has always been, Scholar. No matter how hard I try to find the most broken, rehabilitate them and set their souls free to their truest selves, the result always fails. In that moment when I consume their flesh, I use my gift to help guide their souls onto the right path.
His voice quivers as his clawed hand rips into the chest and pulls out their heart, still beating. He then has a third bite, like a burrowing insect, before casting the remains into the fire and filling the corpse with a yellow light before dropping it to the ground.
Another failure. This one will be added to the sculpture. If they cannot find absolution in the next life, may they at least become art in this one.
He releases the restraint on me as he sits back down, wiping his face with his sleeve while I lean forward and dry heave, tears stinging my eyes and my vision growing hazy. I just watched a live feeding as if it were nothing more than an afternoon activity. Do I even dare ask what's next? I stare at a spot on the ground where the wood has become rotten, falling away and exposing the dirt underneath. I swear I can see a human finger poking up out of the soil, maggots writhing within a section of exposed bone, steadily devouring the fetid flesh around it. This was how they felt. This was what they saw. No. I needed to continue. I took in some deep breaths, thankful I'd not eaten since the morning, and composed myself. You said that each of them has been a failure. What do you think that means? Gael picked at his teeth before replying, short but to the point.
Simple. It means I've not found anyone worthy yet. Until now. But
he flicks a piece of flesh onto the floor between us and smirks.
You already know that, being such a good journalist.
Wednesday. I got into a fight last week. It was during reclamation, a time designed to find our focus and what to put our negative energy into. Instead of resentment against those who put us here, we're supposed to direct that onto our past selves and those who our past selves associated with that enabled the behavior. We do enrichment tasks like painting, writing poetry, or letters, and then show them in a group session. Those who do not comply are subject to the pit. The pit is a 15 by 15 square hole in the ground, complete with top-level soundproofing to block out all sound, painted in Vanta black to block out all light, and designed to completely, mentally break its occupant. Those put in there for 1 hour come out disturbed but compliant. Those who repeatedly resist get put in there for longer periods, up to 12 hours. When those unlucky souls emerge, they're never the same. That's where my attacker got put after our disagreement. They didn't put me in there as though I was pernicious and rebellious. I was rarely ever violent. The pit is the ultimate last resort for extreme agitators. It is the last stop on the punishment board before... I don't want to talk about that place. So, the fight. I was instructed to show my expression of discontent to my former self, and while doing so, another patient, number 244, that I called W.E. As they always had wide eyes, said my work was dog shit, just like my family. I paused and asked them how they even knew about my family, since we're not permitted to know anyone's names and we have few identifiers. They laughed and said they'd seen someone who looked an awful lot like me complaining at the entrance when they were being transferred, only that version of me looked significantly... I managed to punch them before they finished their sentence, starting a group-wide brawl that could have turned into homicide. Wide Eyes overpowered me and pulled a makeshift knife from their waistband, raising it to stab me as someone else tackled them to the ground and restrained them long enough to let the guards get a hold on things. Again, not knowing names, I simply called them Wallflower, as they'd always floated around in the background up to that point, not making much of an impression on me or anyone, letting us take center stage. From that point forward, I didn't feel so alone. We spent as much time as we permitted within the sanctum's rules together, sharing art, stories, and pain. But that's a story for another time. There was a meeting not long after the fight. I was given a lower-level punishment for my incitement of the fight. 2 lashings and less food for a week. I'd take that over the pit any day. But Wide Eyes was pulled into mediation before the pit was ultimately decided as their fate. I still remember the way they screamed as they were hauled to the pit before the sound just stopped. The pit snuffs all dissent out, one way or another. We were sternly reminded to reflect on this and to become the person we were meant to be, as Wide Eyes would emerge from this pit like a cicada. It'd be easy to say the sanctum is like a religion, but there's no real focus on God. They say there is to appease donors and those with particularly focused interests, but it's nothing to do with any God so much as preying on those who sympathize because of their God. This is a charnel house that people come into, but rarely ever come out of. I wonder how long it'll be before someone goes into that room.
I don't believe I ever said I was a journalist. I stammered. Big mistake. Do not lose ground or face with people like this. Monsters. Sharks. They smell fear. He leaned forward, hands clasped together and hanging between his legs.
No, you didn't. But I heard my assistant look through your bag while you were watching me. I told you not to turn around, didn't I? They're still behind you, you know, looking through the folder you brought. They can't speak, so they held up your press pass on your lanyard. Rather foolish to keep something like that on your person, isn't it?
He chuckles. I feel something imposing looming overhead, looking down at me. Threat levels rise in my mind and I start to turn my body as Gael holds up a finger.
Remember our rules, Province. Do not turn around. My golem doesn't like being seen. Not when it doesn't want to be, at least.
Sweat trickles down my head and my hands shake as I try to regain my composure. I didn't intend to deceive you. Your assistant can go through the files, but I intended on presenting them to you anyway. So, before you hurt me, kill me, eat me, whatever, let me do my job and show them to you myself. After all, this golem has no mouth, so what use will it be without context? I was shaking, but I knew if this was going to be it, the only waste now would be not getting the information I came for. Gael kept his finger up and began curling it into a beckoning form, making my body twist to face whatever was behind me.
Don't look, Province. it will be the end of you. Stay focused on me.
His voice was almost song-like as he beckoned to me, but my body continued to move. I felt the presence behind me grow animated, as if I was preparing to look at a bear reared up behind me.
Do not gaze upon it, Province.
Fear, absolute fear gripped me, and I felt my stomach contract as my eyes blurred. But still the turning continued. I felt resisting would only snap my body, so I gave in and resigned myself to whatever was behind me. Nothing. My documents simply hung in the air before dropping to the ground as Gael laughed.
My dear scholar, I told you I did not like to be seen. You've made my golem run in fear. I appreciate your honesty, but I know who you are through a much simpler means. The television. You were the reporter on that day, and even I pay attention. I knew someone like you would come calling, so I simply let you.
I gulped in the air and fell to my knees, trying to calm myself down as I scrambled to grab the folder and organize the documents. Shame gave way to indignation and rage before fear once again crept in. He embarrassed me to make a point, and that point was well heeded. I'd ask you, respectfully, not to do that again. Though it's an empty request, as I'm not in the position to make demands. Why would you let me get so close if you knew who I was? Gael reached out an arm, through a portal, and pulled back with a tattered book. The celestial event over the Emperor's kingdom, before sliding it across the table to me.
There is a passage in this hollowed piece of history that perfectly depicts our little situation. Find it before the end of the interview, and you will receive your answer. For now, we have some business to continue and conclude, all within that little folder of yours.
I put the book to one side and put down my manila folder, within it containing every scrap of information I had on the Antlion and, by extension, the Gahart family. Yes, we do. If you don't mind, I'd like to speak to the person beneath the mask, the filth and the violence. I don't want Gael. I want Bennett Cochran Gahart.
I'm afraid it will take more than that to entice me into letting that side of me out. But I do admire your tenacity.
I took a breath. This was it. The moment I had envisioned over and over since that night. My assistant left me at the spaces in between to go and get some extra recon work done, try to find out as much as we could. They never made it home. They would be found in a mass grave sometime later. Pieces of them missing, to the degree that their mother would fall into a stupor and rapidly lose her sanity upon viewing the body. A fracture within the family that could never be healed. I took a deep breath and proceeded. Do you give any thought to the families of those victims you took? How they feel about your salvation and discarding of their loved ones? Does it ever cross your mind the kind of wreckage you leave behind when you move on to your next holy mission? Gael closes his eyes. 2 yellow orbs shut off for but a moment as he takes in a deep breath.
Those that are lost are lost. Once they have had their chance at divinity and failed, it matters not to me where they go afterwards. Into the ground makes the most sense once I've taken my pound of flesh, their essence, to live on in the angel. They are eternal without the body. Their families will grieve in ignorance, never knowing their loved ones have found a higher purpose, even if it is not in divinity or in their true selves.
Gael opined, almost lackadaisical about his beliefs, as if he were not discussing a human being. That sounds like a whole lot of pretentious bullshit, and I'm growing tired of it, Gael. I had to press him. Being in fear of this beast would not do me favors. When a shark swims at you, you punch it in the nose. I had to strike first. Sounds to me like you hide behind this almost incomprehensible web of barely explored ideologies to detract from the fact you don't like thinking about the aftermath. Like any psychopath, you find innate joy in the act, but not the aftermath. That's boring to you, so you gussy it up in a set of ideals you barely even cling to justify any failings you have during your process. You're no better than the kinds of monsters of decades past that targeted women, young boys, the disabled, the minorities. You're just like them, wearing a different set of clothes and more flowery words at your disposal. I laughed, forcefully but necessary. To think, I thought you were something more unique, that there were layers to you. But you're not complex at all. Your abilities, yes. But you? A sad man who denies his true self, and therefore cannot let anyone else be happy. Gael stood up, the room darkening as his voice boomed around the room, though he never yelled. I felt the power and hurt erupting behind it.
Know this, and know this well, Province. I am nothing like those animals that kill for joy, for sexual gratification, for control. I do what I do to try and give them a better chance, one I wish someone would have given me. Change or death, because the only other option is to push on in a world that will never make it easier, never make it fairer, and only seek to hasten death's grip with every hateful stare, diatribe, or action. I do this because I love, and sometimes that love is painful. You may poke and prod at me, but I know what I do. You will never understand.
He sank back into his seat, and things fell silent for a moment. I took this as my opening to play my final gambit. My moment to turn the Antlion back into a man.
Thursday. I got sent to the pit. They found that myself and Wallflower grew close. Too close. My lead therapist assured me I'd be okay if I confessed, that this was the mature thing to do and would show remorse. I confessed, but I felt no remorse. Call it a rebellious streak, I guess. Still, I pretended. I've always been a good actor. I didn't count on Wallflower lying to me in the process. They came for me in the night. I was delirious when the first punch landed, blacked out by the second. They dragged me across the floor, and I only knew that because of the areas where my feet are bruised and bleeding from the drag marks. When I woke up, I was already positioned above the pit, and the face of my therapist looked at me with disdain as he said, 17 hours. They dropped me in, and I felt my whole world go black. The only thing keeping me anchored was the pain in my face and my feet, but that doesn't help once you get used to the sounds. First, it was my heartbeat. Steady, slow, rhythmic. I felt it increase as other sounds crept in. The rushing of blood around my body, my stomach growling from the lack of nutrition, the way my skin sounded like sandpaper as I rubbed my hands or nursed my feet, my organs settling inside me, this deep-seated squelch that permeated around my skeleton as each one fell into place. These were borderline tolerable, if overstimulating, but it was what came after. In my family, there exists a legend of something our grandfather found in the mountains of Octan on an expedition long before I was born. He never told us where it was, nor spoken of it openly, but he did tell us the name, the last giant under the mountain. In this darkness, I could swear I heard breathing that wasn't my own. Deeper, full of heat and power, filling the space around me before I began to see something in the dark. Looking back, I could see it was the lights in my eyes you get when you push down on closed eyelids. But then, I could swear it was the large, blue eye of something gigantic, staring in at me, hungrily. I can't speak of what else I saw, but gradually the shapes became more tangible, more horrifying, more unspeakable. The giant felt like a gateway of sorts. Things began to assail me, grab at me, twist my mind and speak to me, promising me a power if I would give myself unto them. They told me I had to survive 2 more trials, one of life and one of death, but they didn't specify further. I have been abandoned by my family, my friends, my love, anyone I ever held dear. Perhaps it is time to cast aside this old self in favor of something new.
Gael sat there, observing me with keen eyes, no longer smiling. First, I took out the worn pamphlet that was given out to everyone at the funeral. A photo of my dear friend not smiling at a graduation or some formal occasion, but them in their hospital bed post-surgery, surrounded by their family. I took the transcript Dr. Bancroft had prepared during the autopsy, and, while reading it aloud, slid the pamphlet across to Gael before recounting the eulogy. Silas was taken from us in the most cruel of fashions, a way that dehumanized everything Silas stood for and the community they were proudly a part of. We choose not to let those final moments be what defines Silas, and instead invite you to celebrate the person Silas was and the legacy they leave behind. Silas was a passionate musician, a lover of animals, and, in contrast to the family tradition, was not a big fan of board games or business. But that was because Silas preferred the adventure of the outdoors and wanted to one day be an explorer. Gael simply stared at the pamphlet as my hand shook, the fear ebbing away in what I felt was my moment of triumph. This was the moment I exposed the Antlion's soft underbelly. This was one of your victims, Gael. They were more than a soul to be saved or an object of your obsessive desires. You took Silas from their walk home, tortured, ate, and then discarded of them. They were found in a mass grave alongside 2 others. Lee Sugimoto, that you turned into an angel after a macabre tour of your art gallery, and Lux Gerhardt, your sibling and proudest achievement, so you said. I wasn't done. I produced more photographs, more names. Sam Espinoza, 22. Micah Lumbagast, 19. Ace Uvolt, 25. Max O'Malley, 20. Z Kunitskaya, 31. Chase Freeman, 27. These were people, each one of them with a life and goals that you stole from them. But no matter what I do and how I tell your story, the world at large will blink and they'll miss these poor souls. They'll always know of you. So it's my job to make sure that they get some redemption, which leads me to this moment. Turn over the pamphlet, Gael. Once steady hands began to shake as he took in the information on the back, looking at the photo of Silas's family.
This. Where? How?
Gael spoke slowly, carefully, constitution slowly failing him. I pounced. Silas is survived by Mother Norma, Father Claude, Grandfather Archie, and twin brother Morgan. The Downey family respectfully asks that you wear colorful attire to celebrate Silas's life. Any donations will go to the newly founded Silas Downey Foundation, which aims to provide funding and shelter to those at risk of violence for their sexual orientation and gender identity. I let the moment hang in the air as my own emotions began to pour out of me, and I too started shaking again. You murdered one of my closest friends, and in doing so, shattered the lives of multiple people, including Morgan, your one and only love. Now let me talk to Bennett before I ask any further questions. I am done with this persona of yours. The form in front of me shifted at the mere mention of the name, glitching like a faulty hologram. It writhed, screeched, and howled as something else began to take its place. Worn rags and a filthy trench coat dissipated and were replaced by a simple hoodie and sweatpants. The filth and muck surrounding Gael also vanished. A smell of aftershave and paint filled the air. The eyes, no longer yellow, now a vibrant green and youthful. Messy hair tied back into a short bun. Piercings adorning the ears and nose. Light eyeliner and tired eyes stared back at me, tearful and maudlin. This was the real Bennett.
Friday. Upon release, I was permitted to sleep for almost a full day with larger portions of food sprinkled with a lot of medication. I didn't complain. I knew I was changing and that this was part of the mission. Wallflower came in to apologize while I was drowsy and barely conscious, said it was necessary for my growth and that I was meant to get out of here, to do great things, to make beautiful memories. They were sorry it had to be this way, but they would support me every step of the way, even if I hated them for it. I wanted to kill them. I wanted so badly to bite their face, rip off their nose, slam them to the floor, and stomp on their head until their skull fractured. I was so angry I could barely think straight, and soon I passed out, rage consuming me even as I dreamed. My abilities seemed to work just fine in the dreamscape, allowing me to kill Wallflower as many times as I pleased with no consequence. They'd simply reanimate, and I could try again in more creative, satisfying ways. I barely blinked as the gore and blood piled up around me, drunk on my own vengeance. When I came to, that blood was still there. I had no memory of where I was, what I'd done, or how long I'd been there. My victim was still twitching on the ground. It was not Wallflower. I don't need to tell you where they're putting me next. In 2 weeks, I go to the cicada chamber.
Morgan? I had no idea.
He croaked, voice sounding far more like a man of his age and station. But I could not let up. Instead, I altered my approach. Softly was the best course right now. Morgan never told you about his twin? I read that you two were close. His father was your patron. Until I trailed off, watching a man's entire world fracture. Even one like this wasn't easy.
No, I didn't know. He liked to listen more than he talked, but he was keen to introduce me to his family once we...
He held up a hand to the photo, tracing it softly with his fingers.
I was told he was sent away. But that's not what happened, is it? He wouldn't show me this, force me out into the light, unless there was something more.
He was right. There was more. But I had to complete this interview. Before that, I want to ask you about the night that Gael was born. Could you do that? In return, I'll tell you about Morgan, and I'll answer Gael's question. Again, I approached it gently, as if this was someone else entirely. But deep down, I knew full well this was the same man who cannibalized another person in front of me, and that my guard had to remain high. He bowed his head and nodded, sniffing.
I suppose, before the end, someone should know how Gael came to be. I think we finds that important. Gael was made during the Inner Sanctum's rebirthing process, a trial room set up by some very creative people within the Inner Sanctum's leadership. not reported to the public, entirely on a need-to-know basis. Patients saw it as the last resort room, but to the inner sanctum, it was the final stop before you got to go home. The room most people went into, but never came out of. The cicada chamber. Saturday. Be reborn. Become a cicada. Or die trying. They walked me down the east hallway on the basement level. There's only 2 reasons to go down there as a patient. One is to help out with cleanup and disposal once a month if you've already survived and are trusted to soon be discharged as a loyal member. The other is if you are yourself due to be tested. I was in the latter category. The hallway is winding. You are blindfolded so as not to know the route, the doors you need to enter, and the code to get in or out. Your stomach is empty, and you will be bordering on starving when you are sent in. The only other people in there will be your therapist and the head researcher of the inner sanctum. They will go over your case file, your infractions, and your reasons for being chosen. You will then be sedated, put into a makeshift coffin, and the floor beneath you will open up, sending you tumbling into darkness. The coffin is sturdy enough to not break, and once it lands, you'll feel multiple objects clatter around it, some thudding into the lid. You have a limited time to break through the coffin and get out, or you will suffocate long before you starve. I scratched until my nails tore, punched until my right hand broke and my left hand was bloodied. Eventually, headbutting the coffin to break free, ripping the small hole to allow in more air. I was greeted by the dead and bloated face of Wide Eyes, who had been gone for a week. His milky blue eyes stared at me, small parasites crawling across the ball and scurrying under the eyelid. I tried not to scream, remembering what the voices in the dark had promised me, as well as the sanctum's teachings. It was almost self-soothing, in a way. I had survived my trial of life. Now I had to survive my trial of death. I was a larva, looking to escape my cocoon. I pushed out of the coffin, and the lack of light became obvious when I saw more of Wide Eyes. He was one of many bodies, stacked into this pit. The lowest pit in heavier states of decay, the topmost having been dead for a day or less. All told, there were at least 50 bodies in there. A mound of suffering and sorrow that stretched halfway up the wall and stopped 20 feet short of a buzzer that alerted whoever was watching that you made it. But I lacked the strength to even get out from the coffin. The weight of these bodies was too much. Was this my fate? To rot in this coffin? Was that the pinnacle of my suffering? Was I to be a giant locked in my own mountain of flesh? How could this happen? My family, what would they say of me? Would they even know where I went? What happens to me? No, nobody would ever know. I'd rot in here until they told them I took my own life, was beaten to death by another patient, or that I just vanished. I have so much I want to do. I need to think. What do larvae do when they're trying to free themselves? When all options run out and desperation rules? Again, I look back at Wide Eyes and see his arm drooping into the coffin, the skin graying, floppy and soft. They eat to gain strength. I couldn't face the reality of doing what I had to do, so Gael took over. The fallen angel seeking to right the wrongs of those let down by the system. My abilities increased tenfold and somehow superseded the medication, allowing him to feast and eventually break free. Gael became my protector, my confidant. my ideal. I couldn't understand it at the time, though. I collapsed after getting out and spent time in an isolated cell, given more privileges and access to my painting materials. I was eventually allowed supervised visiting, seeing how my family had changed in my absence. Softened, even. I should have been happy. But how could I be?
Bennett's hands balled into fists, knuckles turning white. Because it was unfair, I interjected, Bennett nodding. You saw what could have been.
They were getting the life. The acceptance I always dreamed of. All I could feel was rage. I told my therapist, Dr. Coleman, and she encouraged me to learn more of Gael. Let him out more. So I did. I first learned of the last giant under the mountain, and when I was fully aware of what I was, what Gael was, I confronted my grandfather and sealed him in the very same mountain he spoke of. I made him the very giant he was so terrified by for 50 years. Now, he is in the prison. He is the one who waits. Then, I put everything into motion. I manipulated everyone, including you. And it's almost finished. Are you satisfied? Tell me what happens to Morgan.
The energy shifts as he finishes his sentence. I know my time is limited. I picked my words wisely. Morgan took his own life a month after Silas was found. His mother died of a stroke on the way home from Silas's funeral, and his father took to drinking. Archie is barely holding it together. I'm sorry.
He's beyond the door. I'll see him again. There, I can tell him how sorry I am. But for now...
Bennett clutches the photo and sobs quietly as his form shudders and shifts. Gael slowly taking over once again. The cloak returns and the man grows bigger.
You should be more worried about yourself, Province. One more question. But first, what is the passage I spoke of?
Gael's gravelly voice returns. I was resolute, however, and pressed him. Gael, what is your end goal? What is this all for? You've gone to such lengths to have all eyes on you, and you even let me sit here and conduct this interview. Why?
Soon. But first, the passage, please.
Of course. I knew what he wanted. I studied this man, this monster. I knew exactly which quote and moment he wanted to recite so I would experience the maximum amount of fear that he craved. My hands shook as I flipped the book open to the passage and pointed to it, as he recited it while walking towards me. He was taller than I remembered, eyes gleaming with hunger and fixated on me as he spoke, brimming with malice and pride.
The mice did come knocking on one summer's eve, their curiosity taking them down a long and winding tunnel. It was too late for them to return to the surface, where the light gave them strength. The path was too narrow. The only way was forward, on tired and broken paws, their skin stripping itself to the bone, and eyes, though accustomed to the void, losing their shape. Through strife, suffering, and sheer will, they came to the end of the tunnel as the sun hit its peak and burned all things on the surface. There, they saw a formless being offering them shelter in exchange for something they were petrified to give up, even in their simple-minded states. But it did not matter, for their fear gave way to a desire for security, so they embraced the formless beast. But, of words.
His face is inches from my own as he puts something on my lap before turning away.
They never could have imagined what it would ask for in return. For an ancient beast knows many ways to entice, entrap, and enslave. Sunday. The rebirth was a success. I have spoken to those beyond the doors, and we have selected a most surprising conduit. My youngest sibling. Of all the family, they have shown aptitude far beyond that of myself or any others. I will continue to find divinity in lost souls, but they are merely fuel to those beyond the door in the long run. It matters not what happens to them. Lux, however, is everything. It lured the guide in a wayward soul before devouring them whole. A true anglerfish. I've already taken them, sending Lucinda to the family's summer home and keeping a very close eye on them with my own manifestations and the help of Dr. Rawlings. Phineas keeps to himself after the little nudge I gave him with his own discovery of our birthright. That fire will live in his memory, and his alone, while he tends to the graves. He'll be an excellent helper when the time comes, so long as I feed his mental anguish. There is still use for Bennett, my simpler self, at the art gallery. I'll employ him there to help feed the wound of Golgotha and build me more angels. I look forward to soon employing Shark Tank as a family therapy tool and a way to bring more fence-sitters and ardent supporters to my crusade through the lens of online content. I'm sure many will find joy in the sheer violence, others in the gossip of watching others fail, and those who just wish to see more death. Hopefully some survive. Otherwise, it'll be most inefficient. I've checked in on Grandfather a handful of times. He screams the moment he sees me, but he never tries to fight me. He knows better. I keep him fed and enriched. He will be useful soon. He will not be attending Shark Tank. Asani is useful as a manipulator, for as long as I can keep her unrestricted anger in check. Though I fear there are limits on how long that will last. As with Coleman, Rawlings, Faust, Mr. De Stefano, and other would-be sympathizers. They all think they're on the winning side of this manufactured war, and that soon they will stand atop the pile of bodies I've accumulated. But there is no war. There is only the harvest, and they will be on that pile too when the door to Harper's Wake opens. It was never about them. It was only about the gifted, the manifested, the inheritors of Harper's Wake's vast land. The more hate, the more anger, the more violence, the better they will feed. Lux learned this through the same trial as I did, plus more. And now you, OF Province, have got your answers. All of my history is here, for you to journal and catalog. It is history in the making. That's right. I knew from the start, though your little sojourn with Bennett was a shock, I must admit. You are here because I want you to be here, because I manifested this. You are not in just any building, you see. When you look up from this letter, you will find yourself in the ruins of the inner sanctum building that I destroyed yesterday. You are sat in the ruins of the cicada chamber, for there will never need to be another. I have my angels, I have my golem, I have Lux, and I have you, my chronicler of the end. Everything has fallen into place. In 2 days, you will be transported to the spot of judgment in a place known as Octan. Bring your journal, bring your eyes, bring your soul. I don't want you to miss a moment of your final expedition. Humbly yours, Gael.
I don't know how long I sat there for. A potent mixture of relief, anger, and shame permeated every part of me as my hands shook, bleary eyes staring at those last prophetic words. This man, this monster had me exactly where he wanted me the entire time, and I was foolish enough to think I was able to outwit him by uncovering a small piece of his past just to rattle him. A man who had captured, eaten, and killed over a dozen souls, and I was going to be the architect of his destruction? This was no different to walking into a bear cave and assuming I could placate it as it's already eaten, or that I'd be fine with a hefty spray of bear mace. I was lucky to be alive. That much is certain. By the time I looked around, the sun was beginning to rise. A chill ripped through my skin as the bitter wind whipped about me, spurning me into getting out of my seat. When I did, I realized this structure was far more revealing and vulnerable than what I had entered. How I'd not realized this was the inner sanctum the night before is still a mystery as I finish chronicling down these events. I didn't report my findings to the Sturgeon PD. Not only would they not believe most of it, I was certain that some were complicit in Gael's activities, in no small part thanks to our recently departed governor. No, this would have to be on Gael's terms, and Gael's terms only. After a long warm bath and a quick mental cleansing by visiting my neighbor Sam and petting her corgi Catelyn, I felt mentally nourished enough to attempt to collate the information I'd acquired, put it into a primary document, and prepare myself. I had to see this through to the end and trust that something would change. The invitation was legitimate, as I would come to find early that following morning when a portal opened up in my living room. A 10-foot high and 15-foot wide, purple, swirling void that showed a pristine lakeside clearing in its center. I barely hesitated as I stepped through. The weather was beautiful. A stark contrast to Sturgeon's dismal winter, this was perpetual spring. The clear blue sky with a bright sun shining down and refracting off the crystal lake. A large, stoic mountain still containing half of its tumultuous rays behind its grand peak. As I turned, my feet crunching the gravel beneath, I saw I was not alone. Around me stood several people I'd chronicled in this report, many of which you reading or hearing this will be familiar with. Phineas Gahart, less disheveled and more resolute, stood beside Rodney Saunders, the family butler. To the right stood Lou Gahart and Dr. Bancroft, Dondella's senior coroner. All four were animatedly conversing as I approached, stopping to look at me. Nobody said a word initially. They simply met my gaze and nodded. I assume you were all summoned here too? My name is O.F. Province. I'm an investigative reporter for the Sturgeon Nexus. I've been chronicling this case for a while now, and
Yes, we're familiar with you. Thank you for shedding some much-needed light on what has happened within our family. Though it is regrettable you were dragged into this.
Lou reached out a hand, and upon shaking it, she clasped her other on top.
The worst is still to come, I'm afraid. Our elder brother was nothing if not meticulous in his planning.
My blood ran cold. They knew? But how? You're aware Bennett is Gael then? That the monster who enacted all of this is the one who brought us here? He means to do something and wants me to chronicle whatever it is. I felt my throat growing dry as I grabbed my water bottle and greedily drank from it. I'd always feel parched when I was nervous. Phineas nodded and pointed to the mountain.
Indeed. The ugliest secret of our family laid bare before us. We learned of his nom de guerre through a shared vision during the events of Shark Tank. Alongside a personal message we were instructed not to reveal until the giant roars.
He looked past me and his jaw fell.
He is here. Good luck, province. May fortune be with us all.
Spinning around, I looked at a large gate spanning over 300 feet high and over 500 feet wide, made of fine black oak with ornate carvings running across both sides of the door with specific carvings down the split. Around it, artisanal obsidian marble pillars stood as both support and stalwart watchers, a set of white and red wooden beams holding it up for support. To the untrained eye, it was almost like a rudimentary torii gate, but this held only passing references to the beauty of their Japanese counterparts. This had the designs of something more medieval, with Georgian furnishings. Standing atop the set of stairs was Gael and Lux. Gael looked the same as he ever did, tall, filthy, imposing, and enshrouded in both dark attire and a darker aura. Flies and detritus following him wherever he went. Lux, much shorter at 5'5", stood beside him in a much simpler outfit. Black jeans, black boots, a blue hoodie with the hood fully up, and a blue face mask, piercing steel blue eyes watching all of us.
Long have I toiled and waited for this day. This door holds behind it an entire universe of possibilities and individuals who can set this wretched planet on a path towards true divinity. I worked tirelessly to bring about the right premonitions in our society, divisions amongst our community until they fell on baser instincts, and all the while prepared my angels and my family for this moment. Now, here at the place where it all began, in the witness of the Octane Raw themselves, we will finally bring this long game to a conclusion.
Gael's voice boomed around this calm lake and a rumble joined it, followed by mass murmuring. Upon turning, I saw hundreds of people in the same outfit have materialized, standing in file and rank though disoriented, and staring up at Gael. I knew those outfits. We designed it many times back in the theater for the Celestial event, the tragedy of Angleron. It was the outfit of the Duke of Harper's Wake. One of them stepped forward, the leader of the group, trying to remove the vestments over their face without success.
I know you. I know where you come from. I never thought this is the path you would ultimately walk all those years ago. Your grandfather would have never wanted this for you.
Hurt within their words as they stared up at an unflinching Gael.
The old man now sleeps in the mountain. What he wants is irrelevant. This was always due to come to pass, Chiya. And as the leader of the Octane Raw, it is only fitting you be the one to lead the opening ceremony.
He smiled, licking his lips and twisting his left hand in unnatural motions as the sky began to darken, the sun setting behind the peak of the mountain despite it only being 11 in the morning, as if bending to Gael's very whim.
Oliver did not mean for that to happen to you, Bennett. He never wanted this for any of you. Look to your family, they'll tell you the same. Please, think of what you're doing, my son.
Chiya pleaded, falling to their knees.
There's still time for you to walk away and repent.
With his left hand focused on the sun, he gestured with his right to the family as he spoke.
You still think this started with Oliver? You know so little, Chiya. A life lived in absolute ignorance, building a community that ran from its destiny. No more. Our family will need to earn their place in paradise through the very hells they began in. A final test from me before they can stand in the ashes of this new world I am heralding. You too can be tested.
Gael looked to Lux, who nodded and gently floated off the ground, directing both hands to the crowd who chanted on command. I felt my body grow numb. I was nothing more than a participant making notes as I briefly met the frightened eyes of Phineas before he and the rest of the group were pulled into portals, leaving me standing in front of the door, a level of fear I'd never experienced before seeping into my very cells. While Gael was menacing and threats were within everything he did, I knew death would be the end should he get his hands on me. But staring at this door, I knew death would only be the beginning, and the sheer vastness of infinity's darkness sent into me a terror like no other as he spoke once more.
Hark. Do you hear it, Province? The final trumpet has sounded. I have won.
The sky had grown pitch black. Multiple stars far too bright and close began to flicker around us, like intrusive eyes waking up to stare in at their terrarium of little insects, curious as to what changes we'd made in their absence. Maybe that's what they were. Maybe that's what Harper's Wake has always been. The final seal holding off that which we cannot name, see, hear, or touch. And, with an earth-shattering creak, the door opened. And so Harper's Wake was unleashed on the land.
Most heartfelt greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlethems. I eagerly welcome you to Sturgeon's most premier station, Dusk Light Radio, hosted by yours truly, the cantankerous yet cautious, anatomically anomalous, and delightfully delirious Everett J. Blackwell. Perhaps you know of us Blackwells. We provided the first ever tour of the underworld, or at least one of the underworlds. We didn't secure planning permission to build a static entrance for any of the others. No, sir. At the owner's round table, quite a few of the gatekeepers were unhappy with our conduct. My father, Theodore Blackwell, was called a snake that eats his own tail, and that oil runs through his veins, not venom, by one gatekeeper who promptly pulled a tooth out and hurled it at him. My father, ever the diplomat, pointed out that if the fine gentleman ever wanted to find out what was in his blood, they could just go and take a bite of him any time. He was a cantankerous sort. Now that blood runs through mine and Evelyn's veins, forever destined to taint the land should it ever be spilled on fertile soil. Dusklight's been going through some changes this year, such is the way as both our staffing and our family quarters do expand. Some may come and go, but their memories, traits, and quirks stay forever. And it's time to check in with our Blackwell residents. Janitor Supremo TJ Lee has been down in the basement, mostly covering SCP articles and trying to atone for the magenta horror incident of 2024. We think he'll get there eventually. He came up to the break room between shows and was immediately assailed by a horde of rabbits trying to trample him, crawl into his clothes, and bite his eyes. When he managed to assuage himself of the thrall of furry devils, we saw TJ Blackwell cackling down the hallway at his misfortune, leaving behind unread receipts from tax info that he hadn't filed on time. He's been consistently trying to take over TJ's life through the power of the name alone, feeling that if he owns the name, well, he owns the janitor's life. He's attempted numerous schemes over the past month, none coming to fruition, but he's as of yet undeterred, and, well, Noldus loves a trier. Somehow, he's also finding time to fight a war against anything decaf, including water, just to wipe it off the planet. Kind of spiteful if you ask me, but he wanted time to highlight the evils of decaf.
so who am I to judge? Delira Blackwell brought in some traditional German food for us to eat, being from the Germanic chapter of our family, Rouladon being a firm favorite. Now that's multiple long, thin strips of meat covered with mustard and filled with bacon, onion, and pickles. I think they're trying to ply me with good food because they've been experimenting with new diseases both to cure and to enact on their packed enemies, including that of the pointing disease, a scourge that once befell old Sturgeon. Should you be pointed at, the curse would pass from fingertip to sole recipient. Clue Blackwell was the initial test subject. Perfect, really, during their molting process. But then we discovered that their chrysalis has opened and what's inside cannot be found. All that remains now is the outline. Still pointing. Delera just offered me Greiner Klies und Schwammenbrie, also known as Klosa und Pilsosa, which is, in essence, potato dumplings and mushrooms. Well, they wanted to pass on some German knowledge to you all. You learn something new every day. Tabitha Blackwell then just took most of my plate, saying that according to Delera, it's the Miners' Parades Day in Germany, and since she controls the mines and the rich esoteric ore lurking within them, she was entitled to this offering from our pestilent family member. Can't argue with that, though Delera kept tapping the calendar incessantly and shaking their head. Tabitha's been working hard on carving out a fresh annex for the station, somewhere for our more ethereal members to gestate and get comfortable, a necessity when you have a family as old and, unique as ours. I offered to bring her more staff, but she told me to mind my own business. Mining is hers, before giving me the evil eye and shaking her obsidian pickaxe in my face. Okay, Tabitha, I hear you, girl. Izzy Blackwell has taken up residence in Tunnel C, acquiring as much sugary content from the communal fridge as possible before sliding through the newly waxed floors, leading the bug army back into the walls, which appear to be a series of complex shapes and holes that lead further into the earth, strange chittering and clicking sounds coming from there deep at night. We've also had some reports that Izzy has been luring unsuspecting interns into termite-like holes in the walls they've made, returning back, but now with a strong desire to climb to the highest point possible. Well, we were concerned, so naturally we gave them a hangout on the roof. We also decided some entertainment was necessary for station morale, and we asked Adela Blackwell to be our linchpin for the main act. Adela would come in weaving firemancy to tell a series of tales about the old Blackwells, their valiant struggles against the things in the light, and how we came to prosper. There was a lot of innuendo, as is to be expected with Adela, but it was passionate, fiery, and very much a waffling. We were truly entertained. Great-Grand-Uncle Ven Blackwell then came on stage with his bird show. His crow Kiwi sang a nocturne that brought tears to my eye and uncontrollable weeping to our less informed interns. Some even began to lose their corporeal forms, crying until becoming nothing more than conglomerations of tears, some of which looked, saltier than others, sugarier, maybe. Izzy Blackwell would then start scooping it up with his strange cabal of insects and say, "You can have the rest." Ethan Blackwell took his time to pitch a new antimatter fishing venture, said he'd acquired these skills and knowledge from his time in prison. When we asked him what prison he even went to, he proceeded to cast his line into one of our now tier-like interns, fish out a fresh haddock, bite it raw and say with scales in his teeth, "No prison can hold me, 'cause I'm a Blackwell, baby," before leaping into the vents. Jackal Blackwell then took stage and announced he got into business with the Farmers Collective as their new spokesman, assuring us nothing at all untoward was happening at Factory 9. Nothing at all. Why did we ask? Stop asking. Why do we always do this? You always do that. We told you it wasn't cool, but then you carried on. Eat your edible cutlery and stop being so uppity and persnickety about everything. God. But don't eat the food. Definitely don't eat the food. Then lastly, Papa Kyle Blackwell declared he's joined up with the gravediggers on a small-scale basis to acquire a near-endless supply of spine-adjacent weaponry through their large skeleton army. He says that this is necessary for a truly diverse array of bone equipment, density, shade, structure, and sharpness. I'm not going to question him, nor Arya, as she uses the marrow for an enrichment stew set to prolong Kyle's time on the throne by a century per sip. And naturally, I want to get some of that brew for myself here at the station. These Blackwell reunions are always eventful, violent, and a little bit, mysterious. If you want to be part of the Blackwell family, you know where to find us on Patreon. Anyway, I'm Dusklight's main and most fabulous half-dead host. My job at this fine radio station is to bring you some of the most twisted, interesting, and downright bizarre tales that I and my wonderful many-legged runners collect from the far corners of Sturgeon and beyond. Some will make you laugh, some will make you cry, and some of you will be confused as to why the intro to Dusklight Radio is at the end of the video. Now, we are going to be revamping the way that we do these introductory and outro skits, but in truth, we found that unfortunately most people not truly dedicated to the Everett Blackwell introductions tend to just skip them, which breaks my little ghoulish heart, it really does. But we're gonna find a way forward, folks. For now, this is the best of both worlds. Consequently, this is the moment where I tell you that today's story is a continuation of the Antlion series. Chapter 11 is known by two names: The Expedition for the Myrmecolion or An Interview with an Antlion. It is the beginning of the third and final act, where we put the pieces together. If you're new, please don't start here. The playlist is linked below. And in this chapter, we have had a phenomenal cast: TJ Lee, Spirit Voices, Vidith, and the Dark Somnium, all appreciated, all superb. Special thanks must be given first to Mandy Mo for the original beauteous image you see of me when you look at our page, to SirGorke for the new rendering of yours truly, and the truly accurately horrifying rendition of our humble studio, to Vidith for the superb thumbnails you see, to Invato Elements for the SFX, Dark Somnium for being such a gracious yet terrifying sponsor of the channel, and lastly, our music is sourced and provided by Epidemic Sound with gracious thanks. If you enjoy these intros and outros and want to see more, please ensure you've got notifications on and leave a comment for every video you encounter. I want to thank all of our patrons for making this possible. If you want to sign up, it's as little as $1 a month and you get exclusive content, early access to videos and stories, updates, and more. But times are tough and we will always be grateful for support no matter what form it comes in. Financial, spiritual, corporeal, maniacal, whatever you want. It really helps us out. Dusklight gives thanks to our Sturgeonite faithfuls Maddie, Courtney, M, Ange, Someone Somewhere, Goth Mommy 666, Buggerslaw Smalek, Dave L, Morgan Ra, JT Thomas, Super Abyss, Heather G, Amy Walrath, Vow Was Taken, J.I. Lara, Nathan Billings, Jack the Lad, 21 Keys, PRDL12, and Larry W. Our Purple Crayon Eaters, Justy Blue, Paul J. DeSena, Darkness Within, Christian Hatting, Calculi Zero, Mothman, Orphan Nuka, Okami-san, Ian Hancox, Echo Kane, Gael Allstott, Alex, Mike, Candyman Gloving, Ashabel, Amara, Phi, Max, and Feeny Von Karma. Our janitors, Alec Hansen, Allie, DJ Muffin, Shane Lewis, Dux, Joy Flint Healy, Sabiel Eclipse, Death 31, Scott, Heather Cayley, Adrian R, Amy, Sabrina Alexander, Arkham Cookie, and Alex Nunez. Our Nightmare Detectives, Melanie and Fox Clifford. Our Void Walkers, Josh Woods, Rat Squatch, and Professor Creepypasta. And lastly, of course, our Blackwell family members. TJ Blackwell, the name stealer and hater of decaf, Izzy Blackwell, Bug Army enthusiast, Adela Blackwell, Firemancer and weaver of waffling tales, Ethan Blackwell, no prison can hold him, Great Uncle Van Blackwell and his bird show, Delera Blackwell, plague doctor and pestilence purveyor. Clue Blackwell, the shambling horror now free from the chrysalis. Tabitha Blackwell, head of the mines and all mining resources. Jackal Blackwell, new associate of the Farmers Collective. Don't worry about it. Another Ethan Blackwell who just rolled into the station. And of course, Papa Kyle Blackwell with his spines and spine accessories. We love and fear you, Papa. We thank you all humbly for your patronage and look to see you bright and early for Dusklight orientation, purple crayons, and existential dread will be provided. And one last time, listeners, close your eyes and breathe with me. Remember, no matter how bad things are, how cruel people can be, and how heavy your shoulders may feel with the weight of the world bearing down on them, Dusklight will always be here to lift the load and provide you with some respite. Drink some pink lemonade Snapple, watch a video on lost civilizations, and sleep on the cool side of the pillow with the window open and the stars twinkling down on you. Start and end each day with kindness in your heart. You matter, you are loved, and every day is another chance. I'll see you again when the sun sets and dusk enters the station.